Good morning, Year 6 students. This is Miss Omeima. Today is September 21st, 2021, and it's a Tuesday. Today, we're going to be learning about setting. We talked about this yesterday in class, and this is just to learn about it some more. Now, before we get started, I'd like to remind you of our school's mission and vision. At Brighton International Academy, we believe that this is our mission. We want to create a modern and an integrated personality for our students within a secured environment, which helps motive, moral values, and scientific merit are key features. As for our vision, we provide an education sustained by values in order to build the nation. And speaking of values, I'd like to remind you of our value of the month, which is knowledge. Knowledge means the facts, information, and skills acquired through experience or education. And we had a deal. We always seek knowledge, and knowledge is something very important and essential to maintain a healthy lifestyle. And you all are the future. And for you to build the future of the world, of course, you have to have knowledge about everything. You have to know stuff. Sorry. So for today's lesson, we're going to be learning about the setting. We talked about this in class yesterday, but we're going to do it again right now. The setting tells where and when the story takes place. Now I'm going to show you a video just so.
Hello, Mr. Sato. Let's talk about setting. Setting is where and when a story takes place, as well as the social context of that place and time. And don't worry, I'll explain what social context means in a minute. A story might be set in California during the Great Depression of the 1930s, the streets of the South Bronx in current-day New York City, or maybe in a small village in Korea during the 12th century. It could take place in a future society, or in a time and a place that exists only in the imagination of the author. Or, of course, it could take place today. That's setting. It's the where and when. Simple enough. But why does setting matter? Well, for one thing, in some stories, the physical setting is super important to the plot. Let's say you're reading a murder mystery, and the story depends on your understanding the physical layout of a particular house. The bedroom, for instance, might be accessible only by going down a hallway that is monitored by security cameras. So how could the bedroom's occupant have been murdered when the security cameras saw nothing? Were the cameras tampered with? Is there another unknown entrance to the bedroom? Was the murderer hiding in the false ceiling? You can only understand these crucial questions about the plot by understanding the physical setting. So that's one reason why setting can be important. The physical setting can also be important in terms of symbolism. I have a whole other video about symbolism if you're interested. Let's say there's a book that takes place in a boring, beige-colored desert. Not that deserts are necessarily boring, but this hypothetical author describes this desert as boring. All the conflict takes place there. The main character feels like no one cares about her, no one pushes her to do something with her life. Maybe they even make fun of her dreams. But at the end, the main character moves to a place that's full of trees and rainbows and candy-colored flowers at the same moment that her life is changing for the better. The desert might represent or symbolize the absence of caring people, the lack of growth and support and stimulation in her life. And the new place that's full of color and living things might symbolize the improved state of her life. That's an example of how physical settings can be symbols for important ideas. The next element of setting is the time in which the story takes place. Number of the Stars, a young adult novel by Lois Lowry, is set in Copenhagen in 1943. You can't really get that story unless you know at least a little about the persecution of Jewish people in Europe during that time period. If you didn't, you wouldn't know what the heck was going on. Another example is Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. There's no way to understand that story without some knowledge of the racial conflicts of the time. Without that understanding, the verdict in the Robinson case would not be as meaningful. So the when can be just as important as the where when it comes to setting. The reason we understand all that stuff in To Kill a Mockingbird and Number of the Stars is because we understand what's called the social context of that time period. The social context just means whatever's considered normal at that time and in that place. It's the customs and assumptions that people at that time take for granted. We understand that although today it would be no big deal for a white lawyer to vigorously defend a black defendant, in small-town Alabama in the 1930s, only a very brave and principled man would do that. Social context is useful in non-historical fiction too. In the very funny movie Clueless, which is set in modern times, we understand that Ty and Travis here belong to two very different social groups and that they aren't supposed to cross these clear social boundaries. He's a skateboarding slacker, and she's been adopted by the popular girls who look down on skaters. Now, if you didn't understand that social context, you wouldn't get the story. You'd think, what's the big deal about Ty liking Travis? And you wouldn't understand that Ty had stood up for herself as an individual with her own identity, and that her friend Cher here had become more open-minded by accepting Ty's choice. In other words, the story would seem kind of pointless if you didn't understand the story's social context. By the way, Clueless was based on Emma, an 1815 novel by Jane Austen. The director snuck a little literature into your escapist entertainment there. Finally, setting is important in establishing mood. Remember that made-up book I described about the boring beige desert? Let's say there's a scene in it describing the awful, withering heat and the endless rocky expanse of nothingness surrounding our main character. Let's say she's looking out at this desert, imagining being stuck in this desert, lost, without water. The author is creating a mood. Mood is the emotions the reader is made to feel when he or she reads a story. In this example, you're made to feel fear and concern on her behalf, and an anxious desire for her to get to a happier place. That's mood being created by setting. So, setting has three main elements: the place, the time, and the social context. The setting can be used to assist the plot, like in the murder mystery I described. It can be central to the conflict, like in Number of the Stars, which in turn has an effect on theme. It can be a part of the characterization, like in Clueless. Furthermore, the POV, who's telling the story, influences the setting because we're seeing the setting through the narrator's eyes. And it can be used to create the mood, or the emotions the author wants you to feel while reading the story. All of the elements of fiction are interconnected, and setting is an essential thread in this web of storytelling. And once you understand how setting influences a story, look around you. Is this the setting you want for the story of your life? If not, what can you do about that? Next, look at the social context that surrounds you. Why do you believe the things you believe? How much of it is simply because everyone else around you believes them, so they must be true, right? Always question your assumptions. That's what it means to think. So, enjoy exploring setting and check out some of my other videos on the 5 basic elements of fiction. I hope you like them.
Okay, so now we're done with that video. I hope you learned something today about setting, but a quick reminder of everything. Setting is time and place, okay? Now, I need you to kindly open your workbook on page 1 and fill in the below chart. Now, what is this chart? I'm going to zoom in just so you can see it. These are the main events and the supporting that happened in the story that we read yesterday in class. Do you remember what it is? Let me just show you a picture of it. So you remember, it's this one, Hall of the Bulls. Okay. So what you're going to do is, for chapter 1, I want you to write a main topic. A main topic could be 4C students went on a trip to France. What details can you add to support this main idea? Chapter 2, this is chapter 2. What happened? This is chapter 1, I'm sorry. This is chapter 2. What happened in chapter 2? This is where they discovered the rock. Remember when we talked about the rock? We actually acted it out yesterday in class. The rock, every time they step on it, they go back in time. And then when they step again, they go back in future. This is a main idea. It's a main topic. So for here, you can write the rock in the cave. Give me 3 supporting details on this. Chapter 3, what happened? Yes, what happened was that we as readers discovered what the calligraphy in the cave was all this time, the drawings. Give me 3 details to support what the drawings were. Now, there is no answer key for this because answers will vary, which means each one of you will have her own unique answer. Okay? Set of answers, of course. So I'm going to have you do these on your own. And of course, pause the video right now for 10 minutes or 5, as much as you need, till you finish this. And tomorrow during our lesson, inshallah, I'm going to gather your workbooks and look at your answers. So this is something that you are going to have to do. And again, there's no answer key because answers are different from each other. Now, let's move on to something else. More writing. So we just talked about the setting. When we said that the setting is extremely important to a story. We're on page 2 of the workbook. So information about the setting can establish the atmosphere or mood of a story or a specific scene. The table below shows how information about the setting changes the atmosphere. So if I were to show you this picture, look at this picture. It's an old man sitting on a bench. Now, a basic sentence would be, the old man sat on the bench. But that's boring, okay? We are year 6 students, we can do better. You can say, instead of the old man sat on the bench, children were running around, playing football on the lush grass. Lush means like moist, it has water in it. Shouting and laughing happily. The sky grew darker as rain clouds threatened to spoil his afternoon. Okay, now of course, clouds do not threaten. This is a personification. We're giving traits of human beings for clouds. We're going to talk about personification later. Hold this thought. So the rush of traffic, drowned his thoughts, making him irritable and more short-tempered than usual. Okay? These are 3 sentences about what is going on around him, the old man on the bench, that make the text more desirable and appealing to read. You're going to do the same to this one. The children look through the window. Okay? This is a basic action happening. I want you to write 3 sentences describing the surrounding of it. Okay? Now, let me pause. Just a second. Okay. All right, girls, please pause this video for 5 minutes or 10, as much as you need to finish writing the 3 sentences that I just asked for. Now, I'd like to show you something that is going to help you a lot. When describing a setting, you can use certain vocabulary. Remember how when we talked about the objectives of today's lesson, I told you that you're going to be able to describe a setting using vivid adjectives. These are vivid adjectives. They are adjectives that are special when you describe something scary. Okay, so you can say shadowy, weathered, twisted. Okay, you can say repulsive, gloomy. Gloomy means like very dark. Deafening. Deafening is a loud voice that makes you deaf. Decaying. Okay, it's like it's basically dead. Like if an animal is dead, for example, it decays after a while. So I want you to keep this in mind. I'm going to be printing this out for you girls. And I'm going to hang it as a poster in our classroom because this is something that is going to help you a lot with writing. Okay, now keep these in mind. Now your turn is, this is what you're going to do. I want you to open page 3 of your workbook and describe the setting. This is the cave. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a bit. It doesn't really show, so I would appreciate if you looked at your book rather than this. Okay, I want you to use 2 words, at least 2, of course, from these to describe the setting which is the cave that the kids in 4C were stuck in. Please pause this video for 5 minutes to complete this. Okay, please make sure that you've done this because tomorrow, inshallah, I will be correcting your workbooks. I'm going to correct pages 1, 2, and 3. Okay, now this is a homework, but it's not due tomorrow. This is due on Thursday. I want you to write a 150-word paragraph describing this setting. You see this setting? You're going to describe it using at least 2 of these words. Okay, girls, have a lovely day.